Hey everybody out there in YouTube land, just another update from Living the Dream Racing. We're making progress, finally making some good progress here. Got the crankshaft back from the balancer. Everything is good to go on that. So what I've been doing in the meantime, you guys haven't seen it. I was going to do videos on every part of this buildup as I went, but when there's 50 million other videos out there for doing the same thing on everybody else's stuff, you know, it gets kind of redundant after a while. But I'll show you what I've done. I'll explain some of the stuff that I've done and how I do it. It's pretty much mainstream. Might conflict with some other people's stuff. That's not my intent. My intent is just to let you know, this is how I do it. This is how I learned how to do it, and give you some insight onto that. So, big news, like I said, is the crankshaft. As you can tell, that beauty is in there. That is a Winberg billet steel crankshaft. 5-inch stroke, standard big block Chevy rods and mains. Scored that on a deal from Mr. Bob Reinhart, formerly of Madcap Racing Engines. Now he works for Stevie Fast out there in Georgia. Mentioned them guys before. They're still out there kicking ass. So what have I done? Well, since the last time we talked, one of the things that I did is I got my pistons back, I got my rods, and the other stuff that was at the machine shop back, except for the crank, because it took them a little bit of time to get the crank dialed in, and they had some issues drilling through it because it's pretty hard metal, which is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. It's just it took them some time, a little bit longer than planned, but hey, it is what it is. Anyway, I got the crank back, but in the meantime, what I did is I went ahead and did some mock-up on this thing, and in the process of doing the mock-up, I went ahead and measured for my push rods. Now, you don't need a crank to measure for push rods. Okay, the engine does not have to be assembled. You need the camshaft, you need the heads, the rocker arms, and push rod measuring tools. Okay, now the measuring tools I have, pretty standard across the board. They're from Manton. They come in different lengths, and what they do is you put those in there in place of an actual push rod. You adjust it to whatever size that you need, and then you measure it, and then you call them up and order your push rods. So in the process of measuring, what I did is I went ahead, I put my head gasket on the engine, went ahead and torqued it down to imprint the gasket because I'm running O-rings and receiver grooves. So I torqued the head to imprint the gasket. I installed my rocker arms on the engine, they're back in the box here for a little bit, but they're going to be out. But there's the rocker arms. Nice T&D steel pieces. Best stuff going right there, made exclusively for MBE, Matt's heads. Anyway, put the heads on there, torque them down, put the rocker arms, tighten them up, and installed a set of lifters, and got out my checking tools. And what I did is I installed the lifters, the rocker arms, excuse me, I can't even talk tonight. I installed the rocker arms at the predetermined adjustment. So the way you do that is you back it all the way into the rocker arm until it seats lightly, and you go out one full turn and lock it down. And that's what I did. And then when I adjusted the push rod, I put the push rod in and adjusted it. What I did is I used a feeler gauge to get it to my cold spec that I wanted. In this case, I used 6 thou and adjusted it until I had 6 thou clearance, and then I took the push rod out and measured it. Now, here's where this gets good. My last build that I did, I was running Profiler 12-degree heads, and those have individual rocker stands for each rocker arm. I had 6 different lengths of push rods in that engine. 6. Which, that's not good. Okay, that's not how it's supposed to be. On a spread port engine, which is what this is, I'm running spread port heads because the intake ports are spread apart. That's how it gets the name. There's 3 different lengths of push rods. One set of intakes, a set of 4 intakes that are offset one direction are going to take one length of push rod. The other 4 intakes are going to take a slightly different length of push rod. It's not that much. In the case of mine, it ended up being 0.010 of an inch difference, and then all of the exhaust should be the same. Well, in that engine, like I said, I had 6 different lengths of push rods in it. I also mentioned that I only had room for a 7/16 to 3/8 single taper, and that I was having issues with push rod flex. When I measured these push rods, I had plenty of room for a 9/16 on the intake and as big as I wanted to go on the exhaust. So what we did is we did 9/16 on the intake and 5/8 on the exhaust. Now there's the 5/8 guys. Those are big honking mothers. I mean, them guys are not going to bend, not at all. Okay, the intake push rods, instead of being tapered, are straight, and these guys are 9/16. Got the end for the lifter, so it clears the lifter. So not going to have any more push rod issues. But like I said, the push rods were all within 1/1000th of an inch, all the way across the board. All of the exhausts are the same. 4 of the intakes are the same. The other 4 intakes are the same. Okay, so I got those ordered. Got the push rods here, and I was pretty excited about that. And they were actually a lot less expensive than I thought they were going to be. Granted, they're not cheap. Don't mistake what I'm saying here. They're not cheap, but they were less expensive than what I anticipated. So it turned out to be pretty good. So anyway, we got that measured, and while we were waiting, we kind of tinkered with the car just a little bit more, slowly starting to put things back together. But like I said, kind of at a stopping point without my engine together. Well, fast forward to this last week, I got my crank, and we started making progress on the build. So we got the crank in, we checked the mains, we got 3.5 thou clearance on the mains, we got 3.5 thou clearance on the rods, and that's where I like to run my stuff. Now some people would prefer it to be a little bit tighter, some people prefer it to be a little bit looser. You know, it just depends on who you talk to. The rule of thumb is 1/1000th of an inch per inch of rod journal. So on the rods, you want about 2.5. On the mains, you want about 3. I run mine just a little bit loose, just because. I've got plenty of oil pump to keep up with it, and so I'm not worried about that at all. I'd rather it be slightly too loose than slightly too tight. Slightly too tight, bad things happen. So anyway, we got that, and I went ahead and mocked up number 1 piston and rod assembly. Went ahead and put that into the engine. We slid the cam in, and we went ahead and degreed this absolutely beautiful RCD gear drive. And what's nice about this guy is it's super easy to set up. All you do is you get your cam card, and it's pretty simple. You get your cam card. All you need to know is the center line of your intake lobe and your 50 thousandths opening point of your intake lobe, and you can degree in that cam. And the way you do it, this is called a blind gear drive, which means there's no markings on the timing gears as far as dots to line up. Now the gears, the cam gear is numbered. It's got 10 different spots on it that you can locate it. Each one of those spots represents a certain amount of advance or degree on the cam. When you go to install it, and you have your dial indicator set up, and you've got TDC found and all of that stuff, that cam gear is only going to line up in one spot unless you move the cam. So here's what we do. First off, we put a piston stop on the engine. We find top dead center. Once we've verified top dead center, we make sure our degree wheel is correctly set. I have a little pointer that I put off of here. I've got a great big degree wheel, great big 16-inch degree wheel. Bigger the better on those because they're more accurate when they're larger. But anyway, I found and verified top dead center. Okay, and then what I did is I set a set of lifters in the bore. I set up a dial indicator that came off the deck, and I put my cam in with the hub on it already. The gear was not on the cam. Okay, and what I did is looked at the cam card, and the cam card says that the intake valve at 50 thousandths lift should be at 29 degrees before top dead center. So what I do is I move the crankshaft till it's 29 degrees before top dead center on the degree wheel. I rotate my cam in the direction of rotation until I see 50 thousandths of lifter rise, so it's got to be on the base circle. Rotate the cam until it sees 50 thousandths of lifter rise, and then what I do at that point is I index the cam gear. I try it in different spots until the holes that hold it together all line up perfectly, and then I bolt it down. Well, I took a wild guess, and guess what? It was dead nuts on the first time, so I got lucky. That doesn't always happen, so I'm going to enjoy it while I can. But anyway, got it degreed in. Now to verify that, you need to check 2 things. First off, once you have that in, you back it off, and then you come back on to your 29 degrees before top dead center on your degree wheel. You should be at 50 thousandths of lift on the intake. Then you need to verify your intake center line. So what you do is you continue rotating the engine in the direction of rotation. You wait until you find the peak lift on the intake lobe. And then what you do is you go 50 thousandths past that, note the degree reading on the wheel, and then you back it up past that, past peak lift, and you go past the 50 thousandths point and then come back up to 50 thousandths before peak lift and record that number. And then you add them together, divide them by 2, and that'll tell you your intake center line. In the case of me, my camshaft manufacturer wanted it in 114 degrees, and it is in at exactly 114 degrees. So we're good. So anyway, the mock-up was done. The push rods fit. I just got through checking the clay for clearance on the pistons. Ideally on the intake, you want the intake lightly touching the piston. Believe it or not, there's a lot of people think, oh, you got to have clearance there, you got to have clearance there. Well, you need the intake as close to the piston as you can when it's opening, because what that does is it actually pulls on the port just a little bit harder, okay? And in the process of pulling on the port a little bit harder, helps pull in more of that charge, and you can net a little bit of power from that. The intake valve can touch the piston, not hit it, just touch it, and it's fine. On this combo right here, it's not doing that. I've actually got a considerable amount of room before the piston even gets close to the piston even gets close to the valve, so we don't have to worry about that. The exhaust valve is the one that you really got to worry about, and the reason is the intake valve chases the piston down the bore. So it's really hard, unless something's really messed up, that the piston's going to hit the intake valve. The other way around on the exhaust, the piston is coming up while the exhaust is going down, and that's where you need the clearance, and you typically want about 80 to 100 thousandths of clearance. Well, in this combo, I got a lot more than that, so I got plenty of room on both sides, so it's not to worry. The other thing that I checked is I also checked to verify my deck height. Now, when I had this block machined last time, I had the decks cut at exactly 10.7 inches. You can see that right there. They were cut directly at 10.7 inches. Jay, my buddy, when he repaired the cylinder, put the new liner in, he had to deck the block to get everything nice and true. He decked both sides. He took exactly 4 thousandths off, and at 4 thousandths off, what should happen here is my piston depth in the hole should be uniform, not only across the board, but it should be 4 thousandths less than what it was. Well, I run my pistons 20 thousandths in the hole before Jay did the work. So this piston here should be at 16 thousandths in the hole, and it is. It's exactly 16 thousandths in. So that's a good thing. What happens here, again, I set up a dial indicator on a deck bridge. It just goes across the engine like this, and I bring the piston up to top dead center. I push the piston all the way down, take note, push the piston all the way down the other way, take note, take those two readings, add them together, divide them by 2, and that tells me my deck clearance to the piston. If it's a negative reading, it's above the deck. If it's a positive reading, it's down below the deck. And in this case, all of my pistons are 16 thousandths in the hole. So that's a good thing right there. So it's coming together. It's coming together, and we're going to be working on it tonight. I've got to pop this piston and rod assembly back out, put the rings on it, put her back in, and then continue on with the rest of them. We're going to start assembling the short block, and hopefully we get most of that finished up tonight and into tomorrow. And then my goal by the end of the weekend is to have basically the engine assembly put together, not necessarily plumbed and everything, but I should have it all put together and about ready to go. So I will do another update this weekend. I don't know if it'll be tomorrow or if it'll be Sunday, but we will definitely update you guys on where we're at with it. We're trying to make an appearance at the track for a safety thing on the 27th, and then we're trying to make a car show on the 4th of May for my work and for the University of Alaska Anchorage that's going on. So we'll see what happens, but that's the goal, is to have everything up and ready to go by then. It's going to take some hours and some lost sleep, but I think we can make it happen. So anyway, hope you like the content. Like, share, and subscribe. Get the word out. Let's grow my channel a little bit, get some more people in on this. It won't always be dumb me and boring stuff here building engines and shit in my trashed, messy garage because I got no room for anything, everything's scattered everywhere. It's going to be some more fun stuff as we go along and get into the racing season and all of that stuff. So like I said, I wanted to spare you most of the boring details of the build. because there's plenty of information out there already. It'd just be me regurgitating some of the same information from other people. So anyway, enjoy your guys' evening. Another video to come shortly. Click like and subscribe, and you guys have a great night.